him moving a little bit, and then we'll just film everything. There's our circle. Okay, good. Definitely due for a trim. This is Bodhi. He's 13 years old. Morgan. And he was a late geld. He's not doing anything right now. He's living the life of a couch potato. But he lives on a paddock paradise, so he gets lots of movement and exercise. We're going to give him a trim today. He's about 7 or 8 weeks between trims right now, so he's really due. He's overdue for a trim in our opinion. Okay. I'll take your foot, sir. So his heels need to come down by the looks of things because we've got quite a bit of growth here at the seat of the corn. But out front it's not overly long. We just want to keep his toes back. His frog's not in too bad of shape. Central sulcus is clear and clean. There's no thrush there. And he's got nice depth to his collateral grooves. But and concavity is half decent, so it's not terrible, but we definitely need to get the heels down today. So that's what we're going to be working on mostly, and then just replacing our bevel all the way around to keep him in check between trims. So I'm going to start with my heels, nip off some of this added height. Sometimes I put the bevel on with the nippers, but today, because I'm demonstrating, I'm going to do the bevel afterwards with the rasp, or I'll use the nippers afterwards. Just for now, I'm just getting my heel out of the way. And then I can start in my quarters, is where I like to start my bevel. And then I go to it with my rasp. If he needs a break, like that, because he says he needs a break, we don't worry about it. You back up, now that you've had a little break. Gives me a chance to reassess too. Need to get a little closer to his hay, that's okay with me. Once I start to get my heels down, I make sure I stay just above that live sole area. I don't need to touch the sole at all with a knife or the frog because everything looks healthy and clean, and I don't want to take any protection away from him that he has on his foot. We're coming into winter, which means he's putting on a little bit of extra bar. I'm just measuring, we're at 1 inch and just under 1 inch collateral groove depth there, so I'm going to take him down a little bit on this side just to make sure that I've got him balanced. If I get my collateral groove depth balanced at the heel, then I feel confident that his internal structures are balanced too. I'm watching that I don't invade the white line with the rasp and my bevel. I want to start my bevel, essentially, I want to start my bevel out at the outside of the white line, closer into the water line, which is otherwise known as your inner wall, so that you've got your bevel starting at your inner wall and working its way out to the outer wall. And then that way, as the hoof is growing out, you don't have flaring and pressure starting to work its way out on the foot. A little more bevel into the quarters, and then I'll check from over top to make sure I can bring my toe back a little bit. And there's just a little poke here I want to take off. Good. I'm leaving his bars. They're actually self-maintaining. I haven't trimmed them. I'm just gonna wait. There. I'm just gonna wait. He's gonna work himself out here. I haven't trimmed his bars in a long time. They're maintaining themselves. This one got hooked with the rasp a little bit today, so it's level with the rest of the heel. But it's nice to see that they just sort of fade away by the 3/4 way point of the frog. And there's nothing extra around here. So I feel confident that he's got a nice amount of concavity and sole thickness because of that. And these are nice and clean, tall, and straight. So I'm gonna leave them there. It's gonna give him nice traction because we've got a ton of snow and ice in the wintertime. So now we're just gonna finish up, make sure we take care of any flares, wait for him to relax, and relax. And this is gonna keep that Mustang roll development that we want. Hold on, Bodhi. Good boy. Woo-hoo-hoo, good boy. Boy. Nah, I'm gonna wait. Good boy. No, I'm waiting. He's like, no, I really need it back. So if he needs to recover his footing, that's okay. I'm not gonna argue with him about it. I'm just gonna wait until he's set up a little better. There, so that he can handle bringing that foot forward for me again. And you know what? If having it up on the jack is a little too much work for him, I don't even care. I'll just go without it. I'm gonna check that from underneath to make sure it's beveled enough. Attaboy. Check my balance one more time. Yeah, so, you know, he's a maintenance trim right now, so I would say he's done. Okay. So again, I'm picking out my collateral grooves, checking my central sulcus. There's a little bit of, a hole here in the frog. So that's definitely a space where there's stuff hiding, bacteria and fungus and thrush. It doesn't stink. So I'm hoping that means it's minor, but we're definitely going to treat the frog, and I'm actually going to use my knife today and just hold still, buddy. I'm going to open this up a little bit today so that there's air and oxygen getting in there, and it's easier to treat for the owner so that we get rid of it. The other frog didn't look like this, so we didn't need to do anything with it. Again, we have nice concavity in the sole, and the bars are self-maintaining, so I'm not going to worry about using a knife today except for helping out this frog a little bit. That tends to be the only time I touch it. There's signs of a little bit of contraction here, but we've been working on contraction and decontracting his heels for a long time. So even though we have this going on, it's still an improvement from where he was at 6 months ago. So I'm just gonna hook in here with my knife, and I don't want to take any more than I need to. But I want to make sure that this is breathing in here and that there's nothing else that's going to get caught. So as ugly as that looks, I don't care. I don't worry about it. I'm only going to take what I need to in order to help him clear this area up. There. After we trim him, we'll treat this. Good boy. Okay. So, trimming a horse for what they need. His other frog didn't need any removal. It was actually in really good, clean shape. But then, you know, same horse, same day. The other front foot needed the frog addressed, so we addressed the frog. No big deal. It's not going to affect his balance at all by having one frog trimmed. What really matters is balanced walls. So again, I'm taking my height off with my nippers. Good boy. I'm one-handing my nippers because he's a horse that tends to pull his foot a lot. So I'm just sort of supporting him. And then I'll come in with my rasp. I'm going to take this bar down just a little bit with my nippers because I don't want the bar sticking up beyond the wall. But I've left it still sticking up enough that it gives him decent tread down here in the seat of the corn. Okay. Good boy. Once in a while during a trim, I take a few moments, especially if the horse seems a little agitated or if they're losing their tolerance or something. I'll just quit and I'll leave them alone for a couple of minutes, and I like to call that a brain break. I do it when I'm training horses as well and when I'm coaching and giving lessons. So for Bodhi right now, you know, he's fidgeting around quite a bit and he's a cookie monster. So I'm just giving him a moment to breathe, go back to his hay and relax before we continue on with the trim. So I'm dipping down here into the quarters and alleviating the quarters. When he stands at ground surface, you should be able to see actually a little wow there in the foot, and that's from following the concavity of the foot. I finished bringing my heels down, and then I'm going to check my balance. But before I check my balance, I just may as well, since the foot is already in the air. Are you looking at me?
I'm looking at you.
Okay, since the foot's already in the air, I may as well throw the bevel on to start with and start preparing my Mustang roll. Good boy. I'm going to check, I'm going to look at the depth too of what's going on. What I really like to see is that if I flip his foot forward, you can see that now that he has a fresh trim and I'm up on his walls, there is a nice amount of depth. I would say at least half an inch of depth at the apex of the frog, which tells me that his coffin bone is well suspended up there. You've got your coffin bone, then your corium, and then your sole. And so we know and feel confident that he's got enough support through his sole, given that I also never touch his sole with a knife unless it's already exfoliating. And at the back of the foot, he's between 3/4 and an inch. So that's not bad. He's got some good support there, hence he's sound. Let's take that, bring it forward. And now I'm completing, whoops, sorry about that. Completing the trim by replacing my Mustang roll, which is just another term for beveling the toe. And that bevel continues around the foot to prevent flaring, to make it easier for his hoof mechanics to work properly in movement, changing direction, speed, digging into the snow and ice. There we go. I really like using no thrush in the winter. It's minus 12 degrees Celsius right now. So apple cider vinegar, white lightning, soaking the foot, that kind of thing isn't really reasonable right now. No thrush is fantastic because it's a dry powder. It's easy to apply and it doesn't injure or damage the live tissue. It just addresses the fungus and bacteria. Now this doesn't get in quite as well to the cracks as a liquid sometimes does, but I like to use either my finger or the hoof pick, and I just get it in everywhere I can reach to make sure that he's getting a good treatment. So cleaning him out, taking a quick look. There's some contraction. These feet at the back have had some major imbalances in the past, before I started trimming him. It's interesting to see that the apex of the frog's actually lifted. That means that things are coming back. I've been working on shortening his toe and getting his heels more underneath him over time. So that's kind of neat that the apex of the frog here has started to release, because that tells me that the internal structures are starting to shift backwards, so he's going to be more supported underneath. But the other thing we're working against right now is that hoof balance wise, where his collateral or his central sulcus is, the foot has been way out of balance. Before, it used to look like this, and now it's here, but I'd still like to see it a little more in the middle. And you'll see that when he's walking, he pulls his feet way underneath himself like a bit of a tripod. And he was really over wearing the lateral side, I believe, and the medial side was getting tall. So medial side was getting really high, lateral side was collapsed and short all the time. So for 6 months, I only trimmed the tall side, the medial side, and let the lateral side catch up. We're seeing a different foot today than I've seen actually in a long time. Bars are taking care of themselves, so I don't mind that. It looks pretty decent, but a little bit of thrush treatment's needed here too today. Thank you. Oh, you're so ready. So I've been taking the toes back each trim. I've been putting a really steep bevel on. I don't want to impede on that white line, but when he was super long in the toe, I was measuring using the guide of the frog, and I was heading out 1/3 of the length of the entire frog out in front in the sole area. Okay. So I was measuring 1/3 of the entire length of the frog out in front of the frog at the apex forward. That's how I gauged where to start taking the toe back, because he had some lamellar wedge in here before, and now there's just a tiny bit of stretching in the white line, but it's really not bad. So I know that now I'm getting into maintenance. I might have gone a little bit aggressive here today. I'm just going to use the rasp for the rest of the trim to make sure I don't go overboard, but I'm really happy to see that this has come back. And this frog needs to still get shorter and wider and thicker and fuller, but it's in the right direction. I'm going to look down from his hock, down the back here, where his deep digital flexor tendons are. I want to look at the balance of what's going on in his heels. Because before, when he was really crooked, his medial would get really high, his lateral would stay really low, and the whole foot would look like this when I allowed it to hang naturally. And I'm looking at how he lands when he swings through. So if the bottom of the hoof is here, and we have our medial heel, lateral heel, he would be landing sloped like this every stride, both back feet. And so I've been just gently lowering this side, and it's a bit of an experimentation too. We're experimenting with the idea that this was getting too high for a specific reason. Maybe he needed more body work, some massage therapy to loosen up the muscles that might have been holding him in that position. But I just gave it a try, and little by little over time he's been balancing out. Now he's almost level in the back end of the foot, and we're also seeing that the hind end is doing its thing and he's moving more comfortably, I would say, as a side effect of having better balance in the feet. I'm looking down and I'm just looking at what his tendons and ligaments that connect into the hoof capsule allow the foot to do. So it used to, good, keep going. It used to be torqued really badly this way, and now everything has, because it's all soft tissue in there, these connective tissues, it's all relaxed, and now he has a much more level hoof, so I'm really happy with that. And when I look, this frog is poking up slightly above the heel, but he's sound on it for the most part after a trim, so I just leave it, and then by the next trim, it's all back to where it needs to be and worn in. I can double check the height of my collateral grooves to my heel, and today, This one needs to come down just slightly more. And you can see that my rasp addressed his bar, but I'm not going to take the bar any lower because it's being a really important part of his support system on the lateral side of the hoof when the lateral side used to always be collapsed. Stand up, Bodhi. We need you to hold yourself. You're a little heavy on me. So on the medial side is where we had so much flare before. So I don't want to thin out the entire wall, but I want to make sure that I have a good steep bevel so that the flare doesn't continue outward. And I don't need to do much on this side, on the lateral side, because it's taking care of itself now. And then I just get my breakover set up. And so even though there's flare, this is all tight from his cornet band, right? We got the cornet band. This lovely soft stuff here is his periopal, so that's protecting and keeping moisture into the cornet. Down beyond the periopal you have wall, and the wall is growing down straight all the way to here. And then from here down, in this last 1.5 inches, is old foot from before I started trimming him, I assume. And that was terribly flared on the inside or the medial side because of his imbalances. So this lovely top growth all the way down is almost at ground surface, so we're almost in the clear of that flare. Until then, we just maintain. Good boy. So he's a little tense, and he hiked himself up pretty high. So rather than pull him down to where I want him, I'm waiting for him to just relax. Once he feels where that is, then we can hang out. Bodhi's very opinionated. I can see that Bodhi's got really nice concavity in his sole here. He's concave all the way. There's a nice dish all the way up to the white line, which tells me that his coffin bone is well suspended up inside that hoof capsule. The corium is between his coffin bone, which is also called P3, between the coffin bone and the sole and this hard tissue on the outside. The corium is where you have all of your blood vessels, and so that's a huge contribution to his circulation that comes down in the foot. Every stride that Bodhi takes with this bare foot and everything that works within his heels is going to create blood flow and circulation in that corium. His heel buttress is going to be a big part of that because from his coffin bone, at the back of his coffin bone, which is almost where these bars end, back is all soft tissue. So you have your lateral cartilages, which work really well with part of that blood pumping and circulation as well. Works the best when they have a healthy bare foot and they're living on a system in a paddock where they can move. Good. Good boy. Yeah. Whenever you're ready, Bodhi. No length in the toe. So he's self-maintaining at the toe. Or I could look at it as that he's wearing his toe, but he doesn't drag his toe when he walks. If he dragged his toe when he walked, then I might suspect that there was something going on with the mechanics up higher in the limb, or if the toe was too long. But he doesn't do that, so I'm comfortable assuming that. Again, I'm gonna hang the foot. And I can see that I need to take the medial heel down a little bit from this, but I'm gonna double check before I take. You know, measure twice, cut once. Yeah. Thanks for being patient, bud. See, it pays off to wait for the horse. So again, see the corn, the heel's just above live sole, both sides. He's got bars to support himself. I've put a steep bevel at the toe. It's less steep in the quarters. I alleviated the quarters, and that's all I'm doing to that foot. The frog's in good shape, doesn't need to be touched. Bars are in decent shape. This one's laying a little funny, but better than it used to be. And now I'm gonna put the Mustang roll or steeper bevel a little across the top of the foot to deal with flare in between trims. Okay, just gonna finish up the trim now. Last foot, last bevel. Sometimes I use my hoof jack for this part, but Bodhi prefers that I don't, and he moves a little bit, so again, medial wall and heel usually needs a little more address for him. And action. I like to double check my toe length by waiting for him to weight bear, and then I can sort of eyeball down the length of the hoof. So I'm gonna get a close-up of that with you guys. So the heels still have a little bit of contraction, but they're not terrible. We come forward, we have that little bit of alleviated section of his quarters, come forward into the toe, and then I draw myself an imaginary line down the healthy top half of growth, down to where he has a bit of toe flare that's still growing out, and that's where I want to set my break over. Nice heel first landing. Attaboy. Up. Good boy, Bodhi. I'll just start walking in circles. Bodhi is naturally a right-handed horse, so his body has got a little bit more easy bend to the right. He's a little more flexible to the right, so he gets a nice balance going. It's a little easier for him to move. Sometimes that definitely affects the trim in the feet. Good boy. When he circles to the left, he's a little more stiff. And when it comes to riding him, it's important for his owner to make sure that his saddle is balanced for his asymmetries in his body. Because a horse who's right-handed tends to have a little bit of overdevelopment on this side. So the saddle's got to match that for him so he can move comfortably. Do a bit of trot. Up, up. Sorry. Oh boy. Bodhi's a right-handed horse, so his natural curve in his body is to the right. He bends more easily to the right, and he's more balanced when he moves to the right. So during the walk-trot footage, you can see that when he moves to the right, his head can lower a little more easily. When he moves to the left, he's a little more bracey. And that's something that's really important to take into consideration when you're dealing with saddle fit. Because every horse is a little asymmetrical, whether it's in their feet or further up in the body. And any asymmetry in the shoulders is going to need to be considered when you're dealing with saddle fit, as well as being a Morgan. Bodhi has a short back, so his saddle needs to be short enough that it's not invading into the lumbar region of his back, and it's not invading into the scapula and the shoulder blades for freedom of movement. Thank you, Bodhi. Thanks for letting us film your trim. Good boy.